We are live. Welcome everybody to Wine Wednesday. Where's my little seahorse? There she is. Hope you're all having a fabulous Wednesday so far. And today I have a special guest with me. Actually, I'm so sorry. First, I must tell you that at the MBI workshop, I did get to meet Dan Underwood of Seahorse Source and got to have a lovely time talking with him, learning from him, Victoria Crow, lots of people there. But Dan was unable to take his, and now my favorite, wine on the airplane. So this was a gifty kind of thing, and we're toasting it tonight on Wine Wednesday. Thank you, Dan. Okay, so anyhow, we're drinking the Apothic Red Winemaker's Blend, which happens to be really, really good. All right, so anyhow, today I have Phoebe Reeves with me, and she is an exceptional guest because she has had the experience of actually keeping seahorses back in the day when captive-bred seahorses were not as available and when it was a lot harder. The whole topic of seahorses being difficult to keep, well, she's going to tell us how difficult they really were. And she's going to share with us her 11-year-old seahorse. That's right, captive-bred seahorse, 11 years old. But let's get right to it. Let me come on over here and put you full center, Miss Phoebe. Welcome, Phoebe.
Thank you, Kelly.
All right. Let me present you to everyone. And there we have it. All right. So, Phoebe, first off, tell me a little bit about you and how you got started with aquariums in general.
Well, to tell you the truth, I had always been fascinated by the color of damselfish, specifically the cobalt blue ones. And so when I was in college, I actually started out with a freshwater tank and got hooked on freshwater angelfish because they were beautiful and looked like big kites. And then when I got sort of tired of the black and white color scheme, I advanced myself to a marine tank. And I had heard little bits and pieces from people about how you had to cycle a tank and saltwater tanks were more difficult. And I remember when I first got my first saltwater tank, I thought, why is it not all that kind of milky green that the ocean usually is? Why is it all clear? So there was a lot I didn't know initially.
Right.
And so what I did was I filled up my 45-gallon marine tank with all my favorite colored fish.
Hey, I mean, you got to start somewhere, right? And actually, when we first had this conversation on the side before we came on to Wine Wednesday, we talked about the fact that I really am starting to wonder how many people started off with freshwater angelfish, because I did too. I loved freshwater angelfish. I bred them. I actually got contacted on Facebook recently from someone who, you know, still has the angelfish that I bred, and so they just seem like a really good starter. But anyhow, what inspired you? I know that let's see, you were doing freshwater. I know when we talked, you said you moved and things. And what inspired you to start trying with seahorses? Did you just run into one, or?
Well, I didn't even know about keeping seahorses in a tank back when I had that first marine tank. My big find there was an Orbicularis batfish, which I raised from the size of a thumbnail into something that was probably just about the size of a boomerang. And had to give him up. I moved. And then when I came back to Maine, I've zigzagged all over the place. When I came back to Maine in 2004, I picked up with saltwater tanks again. I've been seeing them everywhere. Although up here, primarily when you see them, people have sharks, rockfish, lionfish, anything that stings or bites or is quite violent is very popular around here.
Right.
I wanted something the opposite of that, because in mixing all my beautifully colored fish together, they all were ripping each other apart.
Right.
So the guy at the LFS said, "Oh, well, you want something gentle, you want a seahorse." And I said, "Seahorse, you can keep those in a tank? I've just seen them in an aquarium." And he said, "Oh, yeah, they're very easy."
Of course.
Of course. And so he sold me, I think initially I got two, a pair, and put them in with all my multicolored fish,
Oh my.
who immediately started biting them on the head, biting them on the back, fighting for food. And they ended up with snout rot and tail rot, I suspect, because they were wild caught. They had come to the guy I got them from somewhere in Massachusetts, and they were erectus. I mean, they were plain brown erectus, who didn't last very long. I think I tried another 2 pair from before I kind of got a little bit sick of the whole getting ill and dying,
Losing them, right?
Losing them. And I may have talked to a student of his who opened her own LFS up here.
Okay.
About the fact that he wasn't a good person to get them from. So I started looking online and found in my first search Seahorse Source.
Right, right. And go ahead. You go ahead.
No, that was where it all started with the captive-bred seahorses. I couldn't believe that I would be able to order them and get them overnight from Florida, and that they had been raised from babies. And the 2 that Dan and Abby initially sent me were brilliant yellow and just gorgeous. It was a male and a female, and I had started to do slightly better husbandry then, because the very detailed list of directions that Dan and Abby had enclosed in the box were extremely helpful at acclimating the seahorse. I think one of my initial big problems was that I cleaned my tank too much.
Right, right.
At the same time, I also had too many creatures in it, because in addition to the seahorses, like I said, I had the fish, I had chocolate chip stars, I had these very long spine sea urchins. I mean, it made that mix that they had in Finding Nemo look downright brilliant, you know?
Well, but I mean, that really is the point, is back then, there just wasn't as many ways and places to get valuable information, and frankly, it wasn't there to get. So so you had your experiences with the wild caught seahorses. Things did not go well. When you came across Seahorse Source and got your first pair of seahorses, aside from the fact that obviously they were captive bred for an aquarium, hardier, so on and so forth, did the fact that you had a person now to ask information of, was that a very helpful part of it, that you were able to ask Dan or get the information from someone?
Well, I'll tell you, initially when Dan and Abby said call anytime at all that you need help, I thought, oh, okay, that's what
they all say.
Customer service, yeah, that's what customer service is always about. Right. I was very impressed that the seahorses, in addition to being extremely colorful, also looked extremely healthy, because the wild caught ones that I had gotten from my LFS were very thin. They were dark. These 2 were very fat. They were big. They were bright. They ate right away. And I think I can't remember exactly when in the process I started calling on Dan and Abby regularly, but probably it was through the course of losing that first male that I got, which was heartbreaking. But the female of that first pair that I got became the seahorse that lived to be 11.
Right. And I'm sorry, we did kind of jump around in the questions. It happens. It's Wine Wednesday, you know. But just to let the viewers know, the picture is a little bit unclear. Phoebe actually had to dig through really old phones and come up with a picture of her name is either Yellow Girl or Dowager Queen, which I prefer myself. But her picture is in the lower, I'm trying to think if I was looking at the screen, I believe it's left, the opposite of me. You're going to see a picture of the seahorse. I accidentally covered up the chat, sorry. But that is Miss Yellow Girl or Dowager Queen, who literally lived in spite of Phoebe's, can you please stop doing that? I'm so sorry. In spite of Phoebe's learning and, you know, her, I can't even think of the word, your learning curve, you know.
It's gross idiocy is what it
Yes,
is.
learning how husbandry through, you know, while you already had the seahorse. This seahorse, this captive-bred seahorse from Seahorse Source, managed to live through anything that went wrong and survived 11 years. So what do you think made her so strong? Do you have any thoughts to that?
Well, obviously, the first and foremost, the credit goes to Dan for his meticulous research
Yes.
and breeding skills of these beautiful seahorses.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they sent seahorses that were wildly healthy,
Right.
and she had an excellent immune system because I went through a whole spate of different illnesses in addition to the snout rot and the tail rot. I mean, I'm sure that Vibrio was a problem early on. Definitely gas bubble came up as an issue for a lot of the horses that I went through. And she just kept right on going. She ate, she never got sick. And she definitely was a big seahorse who also, in calling her Dowager Queen, I mean, it sounds funny, but she led all of the other horses that I had. I mean, they definitely followed her lead. Any male that I got wanted to breed with her. All of the little wanted to follow her around. You know, she was the royalty in the tank.
I love it. I love it. And you did mention gas bubble disease. Can you tell me, when we talked, you mentioned a couple of things that you did learn through the process that you now, I'm trying to lead into the question. I'm trying to get you to tell me about like not cleaning the sand and things like that. I lost my question. I'm sorry. But what kind of things did you learn once you had, you know, someone helping you and captive-bred seahorses? What are some of the things that you learned about taking care of the tank that helped you do a better job?
Well, in addition to limiting the amount of food that I put in, because I didn't know anything about skimmers at the time. I knew I had my Penguin bio wheel and I had the heater, and I was smart enough to get a heater guard because my original LFS guy said, you don't want to burn the seahorses when they hang on to it. And that was what I had. But my OCD about wanting a gorgeous, immaculate tank turned out to be a detriment to the seahorses because every time I sifted up the gravel and shook everything around, of course, the whole tank filled with detritus, which found its way into the males and in some cases into the females where they would get bubbles, you know, along their tail or sometimes in their eyes. And I didn't have any clue about how to deal with that. And for a while, it was kind of hopeless for me. And then I think I did start really relying on Dan to walk through some of those things and found out that very gently with the males, you could immediately ease the gas bubble in the pouch using a bobby pin that had one of those plastic cushioned, you know, not jamming it in, but holding it in gently.
There's particular ways, right, right.
And that then I had to be careful about changing the water appropriately, not scraping all of this stuff up off the bottom. Dan told me about switching over, since I wanted to have some kind of substrate on the bottom. I had been using the crushed coral and I had a huge bristleworm problem. I mean, to the point where the bristleworms would feed alongside of the seahorses and my hands were numb from getting stung so many times.
Oh my gosh.
He had suggested to switch over to sand, which I did, and that solved that. Yeah. And it also solved a lot of the crap and the gunk that would build up in the tank from having too many animals in the tank,
right.
Which was something even longer for me to learn because I was determined in my 55-gallon tank, I was going to host 10 seahorses. We're all going to live happily ever after.
Yep.
And they did, but in succession.
Right, exactly.
They die and then replace them, and they die and replace them. And after a while, I thought, okay, this is not good.
Right. Well, what I love the most, and we'll continue chatting, but what I love the most about your story is that you are the exact person that motivates me and, you know, it makes me want to finish the site and things like that, because there are people that aren't on Facebook. You know, we sit on Facebook with captive-bred seahorses all over the place now, with all of these groups that, you know, help us and show us the way. But there's this whole group of people that are keeping seahorses or have kept seahorses or maybe would do better keeping seahorses today because of the information available. And, you know, it's just such a cool story to hear that there is a way that they're connecting somehow at some point and continuing, and you know that's what the hobby's about, because it would die if people just gave up. So I love your story, and I love the 11-year-old seahorse. That's just amazing. They can't even say that about many in the wild. Anyways, go ahead.
I would also say, Kelly, that I thought, because I didn't know what the length of time was for a seahorse in captivity, I was disappointed I could not get her to 15 years old.
Yeah.
I had some erroneous conception that because my dog or my cat lived to be 15, that the seahorse ought to be able to live that long too. And so I felt sort of disappointed and like a failure that she only made it to 11.
Well, let me tell you, you know, there's new research all the time. I can't tell you the latest, but from what I've read up until now, I don't have the numbers available, but from my memory from reading in the research, most people are, you know, in the old days, without the information, without the captive breeding, without that, they were only keeping seahorses 6 months to a year. Now it's more like 2 to 3, but 11 is still a huge accomplishment. And I don't disagree with you. I think that seahorses should very well be able to live 15 years in captivity, and I bet they can. But I don't think that Yellow Girl, I think she was leading the way in showing us that it's possible. So don't ever feel like you didn't do a good job, because you did. That's amazing, really. Most people can't say that. So
well, again, I think that the credit goes to Dan, because he sent me a fantastic seahorse, and his teaching and 24/7 care and concern and availability meant that she was able to keep going even if some of the others weren't. So whatever the thing was that I needed to correct, in some cases there were seahorses who were too far gone, but she was a seahorse for whom, since she was hardy, correcting whatever it was gave her a longer lifespan. Because I definitely was 2 left feet and 4 right hands on this.
See, but that it is such a attribute to the fact that captive breeding is making such a huge difference because, captive bred seahorse is going to live a lot longer and a healthier life in an aquarium despite the reef keepers experience level. So you're definitely correct. What I know we've kind of jumped around a little bit, but what are some of the um, things that you would say to someone getting ready to start a seahorse tank? Looking at your experiences then, what you know now, what you've learned, what would you tell someone new?
I guess since I still consider myself completely brand new to this and am cycling a new tank even now to try CUDA, which will be the first time I've ever dealt with another seahorse other than Erectus, I would say you have to take your time. Do not hurry the cycling of the tank, which was a huge mistake I made in the beginning. Do not overload your tank. If you want lots of seahorses, then you need lots of tanks.
Right. I
You
agree.
need to take the experts' advice and dictates about this size tank can safely hold this amount of seahorses.
Mm-hmm.
More than that, and you're going to potentially run into some problems.
Right. Those guidelines are there for a reason. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, that's it. I mean, you have to follow that. You have to not dump food in constantly. I mean, I thought initially that because seahorses ate multiple times a day, I should be feeding them 6 or 7 times a day. So I'd be just popping the mysis in there, and I can't get live. So it was all frozen mysis, and it was too much. In the wild, obviously, they're eating multiple times a day, but in a tank, I think you are fouling the biosphere if you do that. So I started feeding them twice a day and occasionally would do 3 times a day if there was one that looked particularly small or hungry or whatever. But I'm very, I measure it out now, and I think that would definitely be something I would say to
Right.
someone new. And of course, Kelly, you and I were talking about
Mm-hmm.
the fact that as much as we love live macros, and as much as the seahorses love live macros, there's a lot of stuff that can come in on macros that can then affect the seahorses. And
Absolutely.
that it is very important to quarantine things like that,
Yep.
not just to quarantine or keep an eye on the seahorses themselves, but if you're introducing live
Anything.
accompanied, yeah, live anything,
Right.
plants, creatures, whatever, then
They have to
you
be
need.
quarantined and possibly. I'm actually, after we talked, I did set up some experimental tanks and I'm going to actually do some experimenting with how to possibly, like whether freshwater dipping will hurt this macro or that macro, and whether this, treatment would hurt macros in this case, to see if there's any way that we could, um, treat in advance, but at least quarantine, absolutely. I couldn't agree more, and I've run into problems myself, as we discussed. So, very good point. Everything needs to be quarantined. And is there any, I'm sorry, did you have anything else that you would?
I was just the only other thing I guess I would add, and then obviously there are other people far more expert than me
Sure.
who could add still more things, but I think one of the key things was learning that I needed to keep the tank as cold out as is healthily tolerable for the seahorses, which meant setting the heater at 68 and accepting the fact that in the summertime it will ambiently get as high as, say, 74. But by having the heater at 68, one, it kept the Vibrio down to almost nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Two, because we lose the power a lot up here in Maine, particularly in the wintertime, since the tank was already 68, if it went down colder in the night, as it sometimes did, to 64, I did not see the seahorses get negatively affected
Right.
by those temporary drops in temperature the way they would have been had I been keeping the tank at 78 or 80.
Yep. And no, you're that is a fact. That is the key to everything, I think, because a lot of people want to keep seahorses in attached to different systems and everything, and the temperature is key. A lot of people are surprised at how low you can actually go with seahorses without it being a problem, whereas the other way, if it goes up, you know, stability is the most important, of course, but I could not agree more that if it's gonna be hot or cold, I'd rather it be cold. And it does make a difference if someone's trying to breed. You know, they play with temperature stuff, but if you're at the breeding level, you're already way past what we're talking about. You know, we're talking about just keeping seahorses healthy and alive here. So, and that's why I'm so glad that you came on, Phoebe, is that a lot of times I bring on experts, and you know, as much good information that they do share with all of us, sometimes it's a lot easier for a hobbyist to relate to what you're saying, you know, because some people won't get up here and admit that, you know, oh my gosh, I screwed up. I did all these things wrong and this is how I fixed it. And so I really appreciate you. Temperature absolutely is key. And I'm glad that you brought up that point. I was trying to think if there was anything else. What else did I miss anything? Can you think of anything I missed?
I think the one other thing that I would add is a big thank you and enjoyment that I have gotten out of being in the group and seeing all of the beautiful seahorses that Lucy has displayed, and all of the recently everybody's busting out of all of these fry that are
Mm-hmm.
being, and the fact that people are raising their fry to very advanced ages towards maturity. And I remember trying to raise fry, I think it was about a year maybe after I started getting seahorses from Dan. And I got them to, I want to say they were a month or a month and a half old, and I had them in a 10-gallon tank. I was so proud of myself. I was cleaning that thing bare bottom, and I missed the tiniest
Oh
piece
no.
of, and the whole bunch of fry, and there were, I don't know how many, there were like 75 in there. They all died.
Oh no.
And I never did it again. I had been hatching food for them and all of this stuff, and I had started trying to do some transition stuff, and it didn't work out. So I am vicariously living through everybody else's fry raising, and it's very exciting. And I just want to say what a wonderful job everybody is doing with that.
Yeah.
And power to you. I couldn't do it.
Breeding is not easy. Anybody who says that it is lying. One of the things that Dan actually mentioned in his speech at the MBI workshop was that, you know, it's absolutely a good thing that we have these groups on Facebook and, you know, my interviews and things like that to share people's information so that more people are reached and good information is shared. But it is, you know, you have to be careful because anybody could post anything, you know. So while it's extremely cool, I agree with you. It's extremely cool to see so many people trying to breed these seahorses that they, you know, are coming up with, and it's advancing everything because their mistakes might help someone else, their successes help someone else. That's what the MBI is all about. And you know, as hobbyists, taking up that breeding cause and furthering the entire industry. But just, also be careful and look at who's actually selling the seahorses before you take the advice. But I agree with you on
Definitely.
seeing their pictures and seeing their experiences and seeing so many people try is an amazing thing. Just to see that people care and are trying to do this is awesome. But yeah, I agree with you 100%. And I'm trying to look really fast to see if anybody asked any questions. If I'm going to go ahead, sorry, I'm going to go ahead and see if there's any questions, Phoebe. And then I know Phoebe and I have been having conflicting schedules for quite a while now because she is a morning person and I am not. So she probably will not be able to stay very much longer. So if you have any questions for Phoebe, remember she has experienced what it's like to have to keep wild-caught seahorses and have no one to turn to. And, we're very lucky these days that we don't have to go through that. But if you have any questions for her or have any questions about maybe her setup or what she used in Dowager Girl's tank or anything like that, feel free to ask. And then we will just chat some more and, I'll cut the stream. But I'm going to check. I do see everyone in the audience. Hi, Salty Reef. Hi, Michigan Fan. I was waiting on you to message me and let me know. I know we talked about maybe getting you some seahorses, so let me know what's going on with you. Phoebe, if you are you able to post a link? If not, I can try really quickly. Phoebe, give me just 1 second to see if I can allow people to come in if they want, and then we will get you out of here. But while I'm doing this, let's see. Actually, really quickly, can you tell me what pieces of equipment you have added to your seahorse tanks since you've learned to do, things better? Are there any pieces of equipment that have made a big difference?
Yes, I would say the advent of non-glass heaters has been fantastic
Gotcha.
because the pressure on the glass heaters, in my experience, of putting the burn guard on them to protect the seahorses, inevitably risked cracking them. And now with these non-glass heaters, it's been a godsend. I don't worry about that anymore. And now also they have got these presettings that, start at 68 and go up. And I know exactly how much heat it's going to put out. So that's one thing. I've been through, I'm now on my third type of skimmer. I started out with a Core Life, hated it. It was impossible to clean, and it didn't take enough crap out of the water.
Mm-hmm.
I then went to a Cyclone, which was awful. Awful. It's like it had a sponge where all you could do was wring it back out in the water again. And so that proved to be ridiculous and a waste of seahorses and money. And then I moved to the Reef Octopus, which has been terrific because I don't have the capacity for sump and doing the setup and the drilling. I'm just not that technically confident. So all my stuff is hang on back. And the Reef Octopus was the best I could do in that area, and it really keeps the water quite pristine in my experience.
I'm so glad you mentioned that because I do have a lot of tanks that are, without sump, that they're, standalones or hobs or whatever. And so I've been looking to find the equipment that would best work. So I'm so glad you mentioned that. Reef Octopus, you said? Is that?
Yeah, Reef Octopus. I have the HOB 100.
Okay, gotcha.
But they obviously have models that go up and up and up to support bigger and bigger tanks and heavier and heavier bioloads. So I think mine may be the bottom amount.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Well, I've been looking for that information, so I do appreciate you. And I'm going to check Facebook. Ann says hi. Ken and Joe Martin asked if you, oh, do you use Santa Life? Do you use the
Yes.
probiotics? Can you tell us
Yeah.
about that?
Oh my gosh. Yes. I can't believe I forgot that. So as people already know, because I posted this in the group, last summer was as hot as this summer, and there was a lot of scooge that grew on the glass. And since I like to have lots of macros, it just became sort of like a greenhouse in there. And I think I just got tired of scraping the scooge off and let it go. There were a couple of days I'd let it go. And then just, I was moving things around in the tank, and I noticed that my favorite adult female, who was the only adult I'd ever had that maintained her ceri, and I love ceri, she was lying on her side.
Oh, no.
And I poked her, she got up and moved, and I thought, oh, that's not right.
Right.
And I looked, and I had another female who did that.
Oh, no.
And before I knew it, I think I lost 3 female and 1 male. And I had to do this emergency hospital tank for the remaining seahorses. And then Dan was telling me about the fact that the probiotic would, how shall I say, make the water healthier.
Mm-hmm.
And something that you just needed to add a little bit mixed up into the water on a daily basis. And it was like, you know, acidophilus were keeping the good flora and fauna of the water and of the biosphere in there going.
Mm-hmm.
And I have got to say that as soon as I started using that, the water cleared up, the smell went away, the seahorses' color and behavior massively improved. And I think I had to treat the remaining seahorses twice with Huron, meaning 2 full 10-day cycles. And then I did an extra 3 days soaking them in extra Santa Life. So I think it was like double the amount that you usually put in, and they were in a 20-gallon hospital tank. And it really, I don't know, it sort of brought them back after all of that antibiotic medication. So
Dan,
yes, Santa Life is fantastic. I can't recommend it enough. It is worth the money.
Ann Jones asked which is the best probiotic to use, and I will just let you know that when we're done streaming, I will post links in the description. I always say that. This time I'm really going to do it. I'm streaming. This time we're
the Mike F. That Santa Life F is that's for me.
And if actually, just a side note, I do use also the Santa Life Mike F, I believe it's called, from Seahorse in my tanks. But when I'm dealing with fry, I really, really like to use the Dan's feed with probiotics. That you can actually use the Dan's feed with probiotics to get the probiotics into the foods that the seahorses will eat. I think Phoebe, no, it was Cheryl. I was talking to Cheryl last night about a little teeny, I'm not ready to publicly discuss, but I'm having a little teeny difficulty with my CUDA. My own fault. Happened while I was on vacation. It's being fixed, but it's being fixed to a great extent by using the Dan's feed with probiotics, live feeds, and, you know, cleaning up the tank. So I agree. It's very, very valuable, and I do also use it. So, sorry, I was just trying to answer questions at the same time. And
it's a, what do you call it? It's not a placebo.
No.
It works.
Yes.
It works. It really is. Dan and I talked about this. It really is something that promotes long-term health and viability of your tank. It's not something where if there's something wrong with the tank and you add it, magically everything is solved, right?
No.
Because also depends on your husbandry.
Of course.
But I think over the long term, it definitely promotes serious good health in your tank, whatever size.
I couldn't agree more. Actually, Dan has joined us. Let me really quick take this off of present so that whoever can answer, so we can all just talk now and you're not stuck being the main focus. Thank you. Actually, before I even ask my next question, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on. If you do have to go, Phoebe, feel free. I know you stayed up late just to do this, and I really appreciate you because I think that when we have hobbyists talk and hobbyists share their experiences, it reaches a crowd of people that we would never reach otherwise. So I really appreciate you coming on. So thank you. And Dan, you are here?
Yep.
So kind of. So glad to see you made it home okay. Welcome back to life. And my question for you was, with the Santa life, oh my gosh, I forgot my question. I can't even believe I just did that. Wow. Yeah. So what I was going to say is, with the Santa life, is there any particular, are people to use that forever? Is it okay to use it forever?
Yes. Well, it's designed to be used daily on a commercial basis.
Right.
So they use it throughout the run with whatever they're raising and whatever they're keeping.
Right.
At the hobbyist level, there's a lot of people that do it daily.
Mm-hmm.
There's also some people that do it every other day. There's some people who do it several times a week. The proper way to the directions from the manufacturer is to use it daily in a small amount.
Gotcha. And I know I have overdone it and clouded up the tank and made a mess, but it didn't hurt anything. It just clouded up the tank and made a mess. So I just wondered, have you had any reports of anyone having any repercussions, like if they stop using it or anything like that?
No, not really. If someone has absolutely perfect husbandry, they're probably not going to notice a big benefit from it.
Right.
But very few people fall into that category.
Right.
Each person is going to see a slightly different thing using it. It all depends upon the setup.
And this is a personal question. I know you've answered it before, but I'm just kind of second guessing myself. There's no problem with using the in-tank version and the feed, right? You can use both?
No.
Okay.
No, in fact, we do both with the fry. We use it as, we go even a step further. When we're hatching, we put it in with the hatch as they're hatching, as well as when they're enriching.
Gotcha.
And then we also dose the tanks as well.
Gotcha. And I don't think you saw the beginning, but Miss Dowager Girl was the star tonight, and Phoebe got to tell us about how much you've helped her along the way. So thank you from all of us. It was great. She's a cute little seahorse. Did a good job. And hi, Cruz. I see you. Hello. I can't see comments now, so yay. Did anyone else have any other questions for Phoebe before I kind of turn it loose and let people just chat? I'm looking in the comments. Lucy, did you see anything else? The clown on Phoebe's wall will come get you. What? I don't know what that means. Okay. Did you read that? Do you know what that means? You know what that means. Yeah, I can tell.
I have this very scary, it's a Venetian mask made by an artist friend of mine in Venice, and it is a murderous clown. So that must be what the reference is to. It's called a clown. Yes.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, yeah. Okay. I guess the clown will get you. But
that's fun.
I'm trying to peek through the comments. I'm not seeing anything particularly. But yeah, I think I've said it a couple times, but I just really appreciate you, because the fact that you had to deal with seahorses at such a different level, I just sometimes think about it and can't even imagine. It's very, very cool that you've stuck with it. Just out of curiosity, what did make you stick with it when things were going badly and they were wild caught and you knew you weren't getting the best of information? What made you keep searching and find Seahorse Source?
I think I loved the way that they looked.
Mhm.
I loved they were very sweet, although the two males that I posted not too long ago showed me that they can be jerks, just like any other living creature, and pick on each other. But for the most part, that beautiful form, the way that they swim through the water, and the fact that the babies look so incredibly adorable as they motor around, and that the males hold the babies. There's just so many interesting things about them, and that whole vacuuming of their food. I don't know. They're just endlessly fascinating to me. And like I said, if all of them had cirri and the cirri stayed, I would have no room in my house for anything else but cirried seahorses.
I
That would be a for me.
I'm right there with you. That's one of my favorite things also, and my seahorses never keep it ever. They never keep it. Um, but I'll involve you too when I get to doing my experiments with the macros. We can maybe compare some notes, and I'm excited for you to get your CUDA too, so we can compare notes. But
Me too.
anyhow, okay, well, I'm going to open the floor. So, Phoebe, if you do need to go, we're just going to chit chat a little bit more, but feel free to hang out, whatever you want to do. And Dan, how you doing? What happened with the trip? Lucy, let's chat. Dan, how are you home? Are you good? Is everything settling down? Are you ready for Amy's conference?
Well, I got 4 or 5 days to try to play catch up to get back to an even keel. My flight was canceled leaving, so I had to stay an extra day. And then I think I had our first. We had a gator crossing the bloody tarmac as the plane came in, so we had to do an emergency stop.
Oh my
Wait,
gosh.
wait on the gator to finish crossing. Um,
What?
yeah, I'm in Florida, you know.
But really? Oh my
Sorry,
god.
Yeah,
that's great.
yeah. I kid you not. There was a 6-foot gator was right smack in the middle of the tarmac, and the pilot, when we landed, I'm thinking, gee, this is a long runway. You don't need to stop that fast. And
Right?
we came to a screeching stop, and then sat there, and I'm like, what the heck? And it wasn't until we got off the plane that we found out what happened. The pilot was actually on the same shuttle we were going back to the car.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
but that was a bloody gator going across the tarmac, and I would imagine at about 165 miles an hour, it'd do some damage to the landing gear if you'd hit it.
Right, right. So it wasn't just, save the alligator. It was, right, I gotcha. Still, that's insane. That's nuts. I mean, that kind of stuff only happens to you, I swear. um, and are you all are you still going to do the Amy thing? I can't imagine how you're doing this,
That's at the end
presentation
of the month.
go.
Yeah, that's it. That's at the end of the month.
Okay,
So
cool.
and that's a very easy presentation for me, and um, it's an hour drive for me to go do it and then come back home. It's not a big deal.
Gotcha, gotcha. Okay, well, anybody else got anything to report or talk about? Lucy, you doing okay? I don't know where Lucy went. That's right. She's always in the comments. She's such a lovely person. Okay, well, we actually started pretty close to on time tonight. I'm very proud. We won't tell that it was Phoebe being like, come on, Kelly. We'll just pretend it was good. And, and we'll go ahead and cut the stream. Anybody who wants to stay around and chat can, or once we get off. And next week, I'm pretty sure that Lucy's scientist will be our guest. So, really quick, Ray Medic asked if you will be in Las Vegas. Blah, 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 blah. Will you be in Las Vegas, Macna? If you're talking to me, you better believe it. I've got some major plans for Macna, and we will have some guests very soon related to Macna to talk to you more about that. But if you mean Dan, I'm still trying to talk him into it. I know Macna usually falls in the middle of hurricane season. Didn't mean to answer for you. Phoebe, are you going to Macna?
It's tempting, but I don't know if it's going to be a financial possibility at this point.
Well, I want to say, I know I've posted it, but I'll say again, if you decide to go, first of all, there's a Reef Dudes video, and if you comment on the Reef Dudes video, you could win free tickets. And if you decide to go or get some discounted tickets, this girl's looking for a roommate. Sadly, my roommate had a tragic thing happen in her life, and she can't go now. So split that room cost, save money every which way. I'm all about it. But anyhow, Michigan fan, I did not get your email. I will check with you on that later. And I think that's it. I don't see any other questions. So I'm going to cut this Wine Wednesday short. Like I said, next week, hopefully we'll have Lucy Scientist. Then we have a San Francisco Bay person coming to talk to us about their line, their foods, the history of the company. We've got all sorts of people coming up, and we still have Colby on the horizon. He's just a really busy dude. And I'm not sure if everybody saw, but Alyssa came out with the sea dragon. So, you know, we're still going to hear about him. We still have video of him. And then now they're awesomely with Alyssa, so I'm sure we'll see much more of them. And hopefully Alyssa and Kyle will come on at some point and give us a little tour and show us the dragons themselves. But anyhow, thank you again, Phoebe, for coming on. I'll stop rambling now. Everyone in the audience, thank you for attending Wine Wednesday. Keep coming back. We're going to get better and better. Anybody want to say bye?
It was great, Kelly. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
All right. That Dan's bye is peace. All right. Lucy's gone. Go ahead.
Actually, I do have to step out. I got some stuff I have to jump onto.
No worries, Dan. Hey, have a good night. Thanks for jumping in, and I'll talk to you later. But all right, guys. Happy Wine Wednesday, and cheers.
Cheers.
Bye.